p.m. I'd like to call the meeting of the Fargo Board of Education to order for Tuesday, April 23rd. Is there a motion for approval of the agenda? Jim?
Yeah, I move that we approve the agenda with the addition of an HR addendum to be added into item 7B.
All right, there's a motion for approval of the agenda with an item, the addition of the HR addendum. Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor? Brandy?
I have another one to add to new business.
Would you like to, Anne Marie, how do we do this when there's been a motion and a second? I guess we could be in discussion right now?
She would need to move to amend the motion.
Okay, I'd like to amend the motion of the approval of the agenda.
And would you like to state what you would like to do?
I would like to make a motion on the task force for the new business.
So adding an item under number 8 on the agenda business, it would be item B.
Okay.
And we should title it Task Force?
Task force, sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so there has been a motion to amend the approval of the agenda. Is there a second for that?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Is any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion passes. We're on to the approval of the agenda now with the item B added under business. Is there, do I need a motion for that approval now? Or we've had a motion? We need to vote, I'm sorry. Is there any discussion on this? Okay, all in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion passes. On to number 3 on the agenda, STEAM monitoring, elementary STEAM co-curricular activities. Dr. Jonas, welcome.
Good evening. Thank you, everyone, again, for having some opportunity to celebrate student success in the Fargo Public Schools. Denise Jonas, I'm here just to set the stage for this event tonight. As part of the strategic plan, STEAM education and STEM education and project-based learning is a big part of engaging students. And what we found in the last probably 3 years is at the elementary level, we didn't have as many funds and opportunities for students specifically related to STEAM and co-curricular activities. Most of them are related to music and the fine arts or athletics. And with the effort of just focusing on opportunities and finding and locating funds, Dr. Gross was very instrumental in setting aside some Title IV dollars to focus on well-rounded education, which included STEAM co-curricular activities. And so tonight we have 2 in very, what I'd want to say, exciting opportunities to learn from what's happening at the elementary level. Louis Lauer from Jefferson Elementary has taken advantage of the STEAM co-curricular funds, along with Jennifer Hess from Eagles. We have other schools that are also participating, but tonight you'll see a quick showcase of what they're learning with STEAM education and after-school or before-school activities. So I'm going to turn it over to them, and they're going to knock your socks off.
I'm not sure about the socks, but we'll see. My name is Louis Lauer. I am the library media specialist at Jefferson Elementary in South Fargo. And I have some other people with me as well. I'll let them introduce, and then we'll go ahead with our presentation.
I'm Jennifer Hess. I'm from Eagles Elementary. I'm the library media specialist. This is Ben Spar. He's one of our 5th grade teachers who has been instrumental in helping get this off the ground. And this is Logan. He has come to share with you. He's part of our Makerspace task force at Eagles. So he's going to share a little bit about his experience too.
So at Jefferson, we have had a little bit of a journey in the library. It started with our computer lab last year, that as I was looking at some ways that we could make some shifts in our programming, noticed that we had pretty much an unused computer lab. A lot of that is due to the access to technology that we have now in our classrooms. K through 5th grade, and there really was not a need to have a dedicated space. And so really in the last year, with the support of building administration and some grant sources, we've been able to kind of transition our computer lab into a STEAM lab. So on the left, you see what the empty computer lab is, and now on the right, our STEAM lab, which is really becoming a pretty vibrant part of our school. One particular club that this Title IV grant's been really instrumental with is our Young Builders or Inventors Club that takes place before school from 7:50 to 8:10. Right now it's a group of 5th graders, soon to be a group of 4th graders. I'll give you a little taste here. That's the first bell. They stay about 5 minutes after. They get to class on time, I promise. So those kids are building with what's called a rigamajig, which is a kit of wooden pieces that are designed to really inspire creativity in building with wood. And then the kids on the other side are building an R2D2 droid. Right now you can see their finished product as they're starting to be able to move it. They developed it from a kit with some instructions, but now have a little bit more creativity to work with it. So this is our rigamajig, and you can see kind of the process he took. You know, we have 20 minutes every morning. So if you start at the far left, you can see where he started with just a bunch of pieces, deciding, well, how do I put these pieces together? So then he found some corners, and he found some hardware that he could use to now build his base. And then as you move through the pictures, you can see each day or each couple of days, there's more definition to it, to the point where he starts to see the vision of something that moves, and maybe even something that's a car, maybe a little bit Flintstones-like, but still a car. Until this day when he could realize that he could do this. Does it move? Oh, here we go. So the power of being able to take something really from scratch, from the idea side of things, and see that come to life. And you can see on the right what his, with a couple of friends, what the full product now looks like. Aside from that, we've also had the opportunity to be able to bring this kind of learning not just before school, but during the school day. As our group of 2nd graders working with Connects and Legos, getting the opportunity to build their own creations, using some plans as a starting point, but also being able to put in their own spin.
Large wheels, that's pretty obvious. Isn't he just pop these on here like Legos? Let's get ready. Oh, I wonder if this is like the actual base for R2D2. Let's go inside it. Okay, ready?
So with this particular kit, they're building a droid from a kit called Little Bits. They use the iPad as a guide to start with, and then have more creativity with each individual mission. Not only have we gotten our, Kirby, you told me this was going to happen. Not only have we gotten our students involved, we also have our teachers involved. I've been really fortunate to have some PLC times been allotted to STEAM learning, so we have our teachers in as well, being able to do this kind of work. I believe not only, is it fun and enjoyable for them, but it is a great way to promote the kind of learning that we can then do with our students.
All right, well, we have a similar experience that we had at Eagles. We had a computer lab that was not used as much as we would have liked. With the technology increase in the classrooms, it just wasn't as necessary. So we took that space and I am terrible about before pictures, so I don't have a nice before picture, but these are the after pictures. We have created a space where really we want students to be able to explore and discover, whether it's before school, during school, or after school. So we have a few different programs set up with that, and a lot of opportunity for them to use a variety of experiences in there. Before school, it's open right now Wednesdays and Fridays for 4th and 5th grade for independent use. So they're monitored, but they are free to create whatever comes to them. And we have in the middle a student creating with little bits, similar to what Louis was just talking about. And a couple of the other pictures are students creating just with raw materials that are in the room. A lot of craft supplies, plastic, cardboard, anything they can think of, and they come up with some amazing things that they make. So that's open right now for 4th and 5th grade. We also have it during the school day where a number of classes will use it. This is an example of a kindergarten class who came in. They did a little creation, they did a little building, they used the Lego wall. Here's an example of a 3rd grade class who had come in for some time. One of the things that amazes me about this space is we have a few different programs in our building. We have a Level C program, we have an Autism Academy, and those students really flourish in this space. They love to come here. Our Level C students come weekly, and they have kind of a set time where they get to come and build, and they just really enjoy it, and they really come alive in that space. And so that's been really beneficial for us to see how it can affect those students as well. This is an example of a 1st grade class building some turkey hideouts for Thanksgiving. And so we do a variety of STEM projects with different grade levels. This is 1st grade again doing some coding with some robots that are available in the space. And along with the school day, we also have a task force made up of 4th grade students who are kind of in charge of the space. So we really want them to feel some ownership of this area of the building. And so I do have a couple of them with me today. We meet monthly, and they are kind of in charge of maintaining the space. They help monitor it before school. They are always the first to test new things and figure out how things work and how they can be used with students. So I'm gonna give them just a minute to talk a little bit about what they do. And then Mr. Spar is also here to kind of talk from a teacher's perspective, how it's beneficial for classes.
I don't know what to say. We build Legos. We build with Legos, and we just what you can find in areas, you can use that, and you can build what you want.
We also have snap circuits where you can build robots or machines that you use to, I don't know, maybe just have something that moves, or maybe like a robot. We also have like coding and, like Logan said, building or creating anything you want.
And if you're not done with a project, there's this one area where you can put your project down, and then another day you can work on it.
So, like they said, I'm Mr. Spar, 5th grade teacher. I've helped out Mrs. Hess a little bit with getting the area ready. I also chair the 21st Century Skills Committee at Eagles, which has not really been a part of the makerspace, but really making sure that we're taking the STEM initiative and the 21st century skills and embedding them already within the curriculum in the classrooms. I just want to touch on one of the reasons we decided to have a 4th grade task force is the 5th graders always get to do the really cool things. And being that this was a brand new space, just opened up this year between Thanksgiving and Christmas is when we rolled out, is we wanted the 4th graders to have the chance to be leaders and to get to know the space, and hopefully they will then be able to continue on the committee next year where we'll open up to 4th and 5th, but just one opportunity for them. As a classroom teacher, this space has been a phenomenal opportunity for our kids to get out there. oftentimes those students who don't necessarily shine within the classroom don't always have an opportunity to show what they are capable of. And time and again, when I've taken my class down there for exploration or for specific projects or buddy activities, those kids that are maybe typically a little quieter in the classroom are standing out and shining because they're in their space, they're building, they're not having to think about which math formula to use or how do I find the theme of a text. But instead, I've got all these wooden blocks, these kiva planks, and I'm going to design this amazing structure. And so it's just been a really cool place that we've been able to extend our learning for all students. And I'm excited to see what we have in store coming next year as well.
Any of you have any questions about this?
Questions? Jim?
I don't have any questions, but I just want to say thank you to both buildings and to any other building that is moving this direction, because obviously the more opportunities we give kids to really work with their hands and apply what we've been trying to do in the classroom, great things can happen. So thank you.
Thank you, and we can tell that you two are going to be wonderful leaders. You already are. Thanks very much for sharing.
I just want to say one last thing. I think that it's really important. It's very impressionable to have girls start building at young ages and students involved in technology at young ages. And so I just really commend the elementary leadership and teachers for taking this on, because I know it's uncharted territories at times. So thank you. Thank you, Dr. Gross, and to the board for always listening to these great stories. So have a great night.
Thank you, Denise, for the work you do. All right, moving on to number 4, community outreach and communications monitoring. Anne Marie, welcome.
Well, thank you for letting me pull double duty tonight and coming to address you over here as well. This is the annual time of year where the communications team gets to share with you the things that we do and the things that we're doing. And so communications is included in Strategic Initiative Result 5, Community Relations and Community Outreach. And so the communications team is here. They're over yonder. We have Betsy Beaton, Madeline Pizzala, and Kirby Engen here. And we've had a variety of years of service here in the team. Madeline joined us in 2017. Betsy's been here for about 18 years. And Kirby, how many years have you been with the district? 25 years. So there's a lot of knowledge here within the team. And so this is the team. And Madeline and Betsy will share if I forget to share anything with you. And then Kirby's going to have a part of the presentation coming up as well. So the communications team is here. We did give you in advance a written report of stats and information that go along with the strategic initiative. But tonight we would like to share a little bit more with you about something that's in the operational plan for our team, and that surrounds ADA compliance with our website, because that's a big initiative for us this year. And so we'll get into that. First, we just want to talk a little bit with you about ADA compliance, what it is, what it means, and then what we're doing. So ADA compliance, I'm sure when you think of that, you think about building codes and things of that nature that need to be done to make sure that people with disabilities can access things, right? That's what accessibility is, so that everybody of all abilities can have the same rights to things. And so usually when you think about that, you're thinking about wheelchair ramps, you're thinking about sign language interpretation, elevators, closed captioning, that type of thing, right? That's probably what comes to mind. But there are things that regulate website compliance for ADA regulations. And that's for the same thing, that if people who have different abilities can still get to that information, they have the right to that information and can access it. So web accessibility, those rules were authored and implemented by the Office of Civil Rights. There are certain content guidelines that we need to follow, and there's those 4 principles that are on the screen that those fall under. And there's lots of things that means they're the top issues when it comes to website compliance. They're listed there, but that it really comes to down to what could be wrong with the back end of the website that would cause somebody to not be able to access the information. For example, if there's somebody who has vision impairments, they might have a screen reader on their computer that reads the information to them. And if the website isn't set up in a certain way, when somebody uses that screen reader, it almost sounds like gobbledygook. You just don't get it in a cohesive, coherent manner. So headers need to be set up right. You need to have tables set a certain way. Contrast issues, colors on the website can't be certain colors because it might be hard to look at. You might not be able to see that very well. So those are the type of things that can be issues on websites. For us, we have a website that is powered by Blackboard. You know, we went to that website a few years ago in 2015, and that has a back-end system that helps us not have these problems. That back-end system in our template does not allow us to have header issues. That's the good thing about going with a full-fledged system, is those things aren't a problem for us. Where we can have issues is where human error comes into play. Things that we might link to, we might add like in a PDF, that's where we can start to have problems. So in the last year, again, it's in the operational plan, we've really trying to tackle this to make sure our website is up to snuff, that we have a compliant website. So there's 4 different things that we'll talk to you about tonight. A website review that we did last summer, a tool that we've added to the website, some training that we've done with our administrative assistants, and then something we just rolled out this last month for a new newsletter tool for our buildings to use. So last summer, we, as a team, went through the website and really looked at content. We've had the website for a few years. We have a very robust website, and sometimes if you don't go back and look at it all, you don't realize that, oh, there's some things out of date. There's things that, oh, that's not compliant. So we took time to go through, update things, remove things, take things down that just didn't need to be up there anymore. And then also, Kirby went through, we have teachers that have different sites as well, and some teams on the Google platform. And some of those sites weren't up to date, and he worked with them to transition to a compliant website. So those things were done last summer. We have also added a tool to our website. It's called the Ally tool. It's a tool that Blackboard offered, and that is added onto our website. And that goes through and it scans our website and flags things for us. It tells us where we might have issues on our website that we can go and look at. On the screen, I snippeted a little portion out of our website. It does give us a rating. It's a good academic thing. It gave us a percentage score for us. And that shows for overall, for our website right now, we have a 92% compliance rate. So that tells us, obviously we have a couple things that we need to look at, but that overall we're doing pretty good. What I would tell you about that Ally tool is that it was a newer product for them when we added it onto our website. And we are a vocal team, and we shared with them some issues with their reporting tool. Sometimes it can be a little cumbersome to use. And so we have, over the course of the year, shared with them some information of like, ew, this is hard. This is where you could tweak this tool. And so lucky us, they are looking to change their tool, and they're doing a pilot program to change how they report. And so they did ask us to be a part of that pilot program to help them improve that tool. And so we were just added the beta product onto our website last week to have this new reporting tool, how they were looking to change it. And so we're in the process now to use that version and then give them some feedback on that to see if then they could fully implement that throughout their entire system. Again, because we have a robust website tool operating our website, Blackboard also needs to have their systems be compliant. So in the last year, I don't remember, Kirby, what month this rolled out for our website. Not sure. A couple months ago, they added a feature for PDFs, and that's, again, where we can come into issues as the PDFs. PDFs have to be compliant as well. And they added what I circled in boxes there, or in the red, they added an accessible download option, where instead of clicking just on the PDF, users can click on the A download button, and then they get the option to download that PDF in different formats, electronic braille, audio. So then, just again, another way to make that information more accessible for people who might not be able to easily read that information. So we were very happy when that was rolled out by Blackboard, because again, it's just one more way to make things more accessible. And then just in April here, we've been working with our buildings, our administrative assistants, to have a new way to do newsletters, and Kirby's gonna come up and talk more about that, instead of using the old method, doing something new. So Kirby?
On April 4th, we introduced a product called S'more to the admin assistants. Every 2 months, roughly, we get the admin assistants into the boardroom here, and we meet with them, and we just share any topics that we need to with them, just like the principals get together and have their meeting. So on April 4th, we did that, and we kind of showed it to them and asked if anyone was willing to try it out this spring already. And after the meeting, we had about 18 of them say yep. And as of today, we have 13 of those schools already live on their websites running the new S'more newsletter. Some of the key features they have for the S'more tool is an automatic, they can put an event on, and RSVP is an option. So they can have the parents or public sign up to volunteer or whatever, and it's just a click of a button. Embed forms like Google Forms right into the newsletter, embedded links, compliant format. So the whole S'more platform is ADA compliant. So that means that if you look at it on a smartphone or on a tablet, it's going to automatically be responsive, just like our website. What a great reading experience. Have you looked at what we currently have for our school newsletters? They're PDF, and they sometimes have a lot of stuff on one page. And then maybe 26 of those pages for some of our schools. So it's going to be a whole new experience, because when you look at the news now on your computer, or let's take Facebook, what do? You swipe and swipe and swipe. So everybody's pretty used to swiping, and that's what the S'more newsletter format is. It's a channel of information like your Facebook feed, so that the user can feel more comfortable on a smaller device. The images are very compliant in that they can easily put an alt tag on those to describe them, and all of the text is conformed to the product, so nobody can just highlight a word and make it blue. If you've seen, again, some of our newsletters have that. So the admin assistants, though, and some principals do their newsletters, are very excited because they don't have to take the time to do all that anymore. They don't have to do all the formatting because this product lays it out. And we have a couple more examples here of some of them that were done last week. And then they get their own colors, we get their logo on the newsletter to give it some feel for their school. And then our secondaries all do daily announcements. So this is an example. I taught the admin assistant at Ben Franklin in the morning how to do her newsletter, and then I got a call from her in the afternoon. Hey, I decided to do my announcements too. Do you want to turn them on? So they're already shooting out their announcements in the S'more newsletter platform. And this happens to be the school, Ben Franklin. Another thing they can start to do is just send out blurbs of information. Instead of a whole 26-page newsletter that comes out every 2 months, they could send out the topic and have several topics come out during those 2 months instead of such a big, huge document. One more thing about this is this product is also fully integrated with the Blackboard mass communication system. So when the principals or the admin assistant are going into the Blackboard notification program to use that platform, S'more is built in. There's a S'more button, and their newsletters can be brought and embedded right into that newsletter, that announcement that goes out.
Those are some of the things we've been working on for the ADA compliance issue this year. We have some more steps we're going to take, of course. We're going to do another review of our website here coming up this summer to make sure that our items are compliant. We're going to be continuing to work with Blackboard and being in that pilot program for Ally to help make that tool a little bit more easy to use. And then, of course, just going forth and making sure our website is up to date and compliant for all users. So if there's any particular questions you have, we'd be happy to answer those at this time.
John, and then Robin.
Not really a question, but I just want to say thank you for making sure that our website and all of our materials are accessible. I do know people that have severe vision impairments, and modern accessible technology has been life-changing for them. And definitely want to make sure that they're able to access our district's information as well. So thank you. Keep up the good work.
Robin?
So a question, sorry, I've got a new mouthful of hardware today. I'm going to be slurring tonight. Yes, so is this ADA, this is the first time I've heard of ADA compliance for a website. Is this a federal requirement like it is for our buildings?
It is a requirement. It is something that someone could lodge a complaint with the OCR for.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else with questions? I believe you've enlightened us this evening. Thank you so much. I do have a couple questions. And Rupak, did you have a comment?
I can go after you.
Why don't you go right now, because I want to make sure that I call on you. Thank you.
Sure. I don't know if our communications team will take the liberty to share, but if you go to page 12 of their communications report, that was not part of their presentation, there is a list of awards that our team perennially wins, and they've won this year as well. And I didn't want them not to mention that, but there are about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bullets of just different awards that our communication teams won. So I just want to acknowledge that and make sure that that got pointed out today as well.
Thank you for doing that. Well, that newsletter tool, just like a s'more over a bonfire, is pretty yummy. Most of us probably agree. It sounds like a fabulous tool. It's very exciting.
So the training went really well because I brought s'mores to it.
Nice move.
He did. We're really happy with how that's going as well. We offered it to administrative assistants this spring and just asked, hey, who's interested? Would you like, if you'd like to, we could do this, or I can wait till next year. And we're pretty blown away of how many are like, yeah, I want to do it now. And so others will join in the fall if they're not doing it already, but a good majority, if close to all of them, are hopped on board, and we're really pleased with that.
So I am wondering, you mentioned that there are a couple of areas that the district needs to look at in regard to the Ally tool for improvement. Could you just share a couple with us?
Yeah, so really the things that we get hit for the most are PDFs. And so those are links, that we add onto our website. And so when you open a PDF, they need to be compliant, just like the website. So they need to have headers, that if there's an image on that PDF that's supposed to have an alt tag, it's supposed to be as just compliant as the website itself. And so that means that the PDF, when it's created, if it's this Word document, there's certain things that need to be done in the Word document, so when you turn it into a PDF, that it's then compliant. We have a lot of PDFs on our website, a lot. And so that is the biggest thing we need to tackle. And that's some of the things that we did last summer, was taking down old content that didn't need to be there anymore, maybe publicizing a past event, so to speak. One of the things that the new Ally reporting tool is going to do, which we have to play around with yet, is going to allow us to get better real-time information about which PDFs need to be looked at. And then the goal is, at some point, I don't know when Blackboard will be able to do that, but hopefully that they'll have the tool allow us to change the PDF in the tool versus go find the original document and fix the compliance issues there. Again, we have so many PDFs online that it's a lot of documents that need to be touched. The other thing is, while of course we want things to be compliant, we also want the information available. So sometimes if the only document we have is one from an architect that's a scanned copy on a scanner, we have to make the decision, is it better to put that out, the version we have, or not have it out there at all? So, while of course we want everything to be compliant, there are some times where we have to make that judgment call of have that information out there, or know that we could be dinged for it. So, but that is something we're working on, is going back and making sure PDFs that are posted are compliant.
Thank you. And then in regard to the pilot program, what is the time frame for that?
We don't know when they're going to end that. They just got that live for us last week. It went live on Thursday. And they haven't shared information with us of when they want to close that out. Other districts in North Dakota also use Blackboard. West Fargo is also part of that pilot tool. I don't know if some of the other districts are, but West Fargo is also in that pilot program. So we'll be providing feedback here in the coming weeks about how the new version, the new features are working.
Great, thank you very much. Thanks to the whole team.
Thank you.
Oh, Brian, yes.
You know, listening to you speak, you guys are well advanced here, and just wondering if you've had any thoughts on things like, well, if a person wanted to find out how often we serve pizza at Fargo South, they could type that in as a question, and it could pull up the results rather than a static PDF. Have you guys thought about searches like that where you could, and maybe it's possible that you're already doing it?
That gets into a new tool that our nutrition services department has too, on how our lunch menu is available online. So there might be some things about that tool. But there is a search tool on our website, and depending upon what you're looking for, people can find it. But so
You guys seem really advanced, that's why I'm just curious as far as how far you're going with this, so.
Well, you help the district and the board do its work, and we couldn't do our work without you, so thank you so, so much. All right, we don't have anyone that has signed up to address the audience this evening, so moving on to staff reports to the FEA. Welcome.
Thank you. So Laura wasn't feeling well today. I'm Lynette Crispin, the treasurer of FEA, and just kind of wanted to talk a little bit and then do a few brags about Ben Franklin, which was kind of neat that Ben Franklin was up there too, because I also wear the hat as counselor of Ben Franklin. But as FEA, we're looking forward to the retirement social that we have at the beginning of May here to honor all of our retirees in the district. So that's always an exciting time and full of memories and then emotions as well. And we're also doing a little bit of FEA executive board ballots for our members to pick some new members that'll be in the executive board. And as far as Ben Franklin, I was up at North High today to do the reunification drills, so that was really neat to see in the capacity of a counselor. Great debriefing for counselors, as well as I imagine you had a good debriefing this afternoon too. And then I'll just brag on 8th graders. They've been doing scuba diving up at North, so it's been fun to smell the chlorine as the 8th graders have come back, but you can tell they really learned a lot, and what a great opportunity right here in our district. And then the history teachers asked me to share with their brag that in May, they will be examining the past and present of North Dakota. And so the 8th grade students will use the historical Bag Farm to learn about the importance of bonanza farming in North Dakota. And then they will spend some time, actually a whole day, learning about energy and energy careers in North Dakota through hands-on and inquiry-based activities. So that's coming up as well.
Thank you for sharing. Moving on to the superintendent's report, Dr. Gandhi.
Sure. I can talk a little bit about kind of our building capacity and usage task force. I know that there's kind of been some conversations around that and some attention in the media as well. So just wanted to give the board an update of where we are in terms of the process so far. We've had 3 meetings to date. We spent the first meeting really going over some of the board parameters that were established at our February 12th work session that was shared with us, and then having some information presented from the city of Fargo, and then also reviewing our demographers' information for from RSP that has, I think, since as long as we've been using them, I think historically had over a 97% accuracy rate. So really kind of using that to look at our building capacity, our usage, and then most importantly, our projections for the next 5 years down the road, which is how far they've set those projections. At our second meeting, we started discussing middle school boundaries, knowing that according to our projection reports, Discovery Middle School in 5 years is looking at being at capacity. We have space at Ben Franklin and Carl Ben, and we had posed the question to the task force at that time, should we even be looking at boundaries, changing boundaries for middle school at this point, or should we not look at that right now and wait until that 5 years? Well, after discussion about looking at all the options and the consequences, that the task force at that meeting decided, no, we want to kind of take a look at boundary options for middle school and making that change. So we asked task force members to break down into groups and come up with different scenarios. The district has one software that we're able to test different scenarios. And when we use that phrase, it means as we provided groups with maps of our city, and as they drew different boundary options, they're able to give that to Dr. Gross, who, while projecting live, is able to draw in that scenario. And then it kind of shows you, okay, based on our current location of students that are geocoded, what would that change to each of our buildings in terms of capacity, but also look at different demographic markers as well. So at that meeting, we had 8 suggestions that were, they said, can you go back between the next 2 meetings and draw these scenarios? So we did. At the next meeting, we actually presented 10. One of them was a scenario that we as administration thought we should take a look at this because it was an iteration of one of the scenarios that was there. And then the 10th was a separate scenario that didn't involve just changing boundaries, actually involved adding on to one of the middle schools, which was not one of our parameters that we were guided for. But since it was brought up and someone said, can you explore this, we thought we might as well kind of share that as well. So at our 3rd meeting, we asked the task force to rank where they thought each of those scenarios were. And that didn't mean rank for final recommendation. That meant rank the scenarios that we wanted to explore on deeper and see what tweaks we could make. So one of the scenarios that was, 2 of the scenarios that were kind of shared in the paper, scenario 9 and scenario 8, came to the top of the rankings. We did share with the task force members that scenario 9 was the scenario that administration had put into place. And if they didn't want to explore that further, or if they wanted to look at other scenarios just because that recommendation came from us, then we could absolutely do that. Task force members said, no, let's look at all of those scenarios. So we looked at scenario 9 versus scenario 8, scenario 6 versus, I think, scenario 4. And then there's a couple of scenarios they said that we don't want to look further. And at the end of that meeting, they said, between now and the next meeting, can you look at different tweaks of scenario 9 and scenario 8 and see how would that impact different school building sizes, different markers that we're looking at, so then we can come back and visit them. So I say that because I know that it's been reported that a couple of scenarios that came to the top, the task force members themselves have not voted on any scenarios. Actually, at the end of the 2nd meeting, we had a conversation to conclude that meeting that we know that this is not only hard work, but this is work that impacts a lot of people, and we understand that there's a lot at stake and there's a lot of consideration here. So we didn't want at that point to allow anyone to think that, okay, the task force has already made recommendations and to kind of get ahead of it. But unfortunately, that's where we are now. We have not reached 80% consensus. We haven't voted on any of the scenarios. We're still looking at tweaking a couple of the scenarios that were voted on before we even have reached consensus or a recommendation to the board. But since one of the media outlets kind of said those 2 scenarios came to the top when we did the initial ranking of what we want to explore further, we thought, as a district, let's just be fully transparent and throw out all 9 scenarios. So the 9 scenarios that were originally suggested and talked about are on our district building capacity and usage task force. But I just wanted to let the board know that none of those have gone through the process of seeing, do they have consensus from the task force members yet, because we're not there yet.
Thank you, Mr. Gandhi. Does anyone have questions for Rupak at this point? And they're on the website, right, is what those 9?
Correct, if you go to About Us, Task Force, and Building Capacity and Usage.
David, did you have your hand up? Or?
I was just wondering, and this, you said no decisions have been made, but you're looking at a potential for boundary changes by when?
I think that would have to be a conversation with the board. At this point, we kind of know that when our buildings are supposed to be at capacity. So even whatever recommendation that comes out of this task force, we would have to then bring that to the board, talk about what would be the timeframe for communication, when would the change of implementation be. But then there's also additional factors such as grandfathering students that are currently at those schools, all those conversations would have to be part of the board discussion, the board vote. So I can't give a time right now. I think that needs to be a larger group conversation.
Robin?
It might be useful for board members that weren't around when Davies was built, how the grandfathering and that ease-in process happened. So, because a lot of the emails that we are receiving have to do with splitting up families, and we already brought our Letterman's jackets and grandfathering and things like that. And it's not just a one-and-done transition, so I think that would be a helpful tool.
And to build on that, the last time that we drew boundaries, there was a similar process that went into place to allow families to plan. Jennifer?
I also have a question around projections, and it seems like future projections in our data for RSP have showed a slowing in the growth, and why isn't that being considered in part of these conversations, as well as the land that was purchased for additional middle school and timelines? All of those things aren't being talked about at this task force.
Sure, and I can speak to some of them. I think we are looking at the projections for where we are 5 years out. So even if whether the projection rate is increasing or decreasing over time, we know that where Discovery is going to be at capacity in how many years and where Davie is going to be in capacity, and that's kind of the data that we're using. As it relates to the land that the district's purchased, I think there's a variety of factors, and I think what happens with redistricting or with boundaries could influence the timeline for when there's need to build as well. So I say this very cautiously because this is just an example, but for example, if we are able to move 250 students for a Discovery Middle School to another school and there's spots there, that may delay the timeline in which we would have to build a new school on that side of town.
Jennifer?
I'm not sure how we talk about one exclusively without the other, because to me, then it becomes sort of like a ping pong approach for families. So you're going to move them now, but in 5 years, if you open a middle school, you're going to potentially move them back.
I'll start with saying, I would welcome a conversation with the board about this as well and to seek some guidance. I think a couple of things. One is that currently in our long-range facilities plan, we say that we plan for the next school when we reach half the enrollment of what it would take to fulfill that school. So I think that is going to be the number that we use to trigger. Secondly, what I'm saying is that if we don't do this, potentially, if we would not make any changes at this point, if Discovery as a middle school were at capacity 5 years from now, then yes, there could be the need for a new school if we've met capacity and then we've hit that trigger of half the enrollment for the new school. However, if we were to make some boundary changes, then we would not need that school in 5 years because you have room at Discovery to account for the growth. So you potentially might not need the need for a new school for 8 years, 9 years, and I don't know what that extended timeline is, but you've created room on that south side of town. And I think that's a piece of conversation. So I understand your piece. I can't speak to ping-ponging because I don't know if it's going to be the same families that would be impacted at that point because they might have gone through that middle school already. And then again, we have to consider the factors such as grandfathering and everything else. So can the boundary changes delay how fast we need to build a new school? Yes. I do think that that is a potential that we need to consider.
Anyone else have questions? Jennifer?
I just have one final comment. When it comes to like city projections, and I think you're going to be talking about this at the next meeting, according to developments that are filling in, I think that might help us understand whether or not a move like this would actually buy us time or not even any. Because I think there's potential based on, from what some of those folks have said, that you're going to have to build this school sooner rather than later.
We have asked at the City of Fargo to start the next task force meeting with a presentation specifically on development and permits, and what's the expected rate of growth on the south side of town.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Gandhi, you take the legislative update as well, please?
I don't know if I have anything. I know because Robin does, and it's kind of like we said, the third quarter of the hockey match, so I will let it be with Robin for her update. Third period, you were right. I am not a Midwestern, I apologize, but I will get it right.
You don't have to be from the Midwest to know. I did forget to ask you something, though. I was wondering if you could give us a brief update on the reunification drill and how that went today.
I would be happy to, because I just want to start by acknowledging all of our staff that were part of the reunification drill. And not just staff, but we had student actors that were part of it. We had students and we had parents that had to kind of partake in the process. It was a great process to see, as Fargo Public Schools, systemically how we would respond if we ever need to go through the reunification process. Today we practiced a drill with a situation that potentially could happen at Madison and reunifying those students at North High School. So I'd like to thank North High School for their hospitality. But we learned so much throughout the process. We know that we grow every time we go through that drill. From my eyes, it was a very successful drill. We did very well. We have tremendous amount of leadership in this district and a dedicated staff that really cares about students, are willing to drop everything they can. And not just about making sure that we follow all of the processes, but we're accommodating every student and parents during any time of need if we ever have to engage in that process. So I thought it went very well. We had a great debrief meeting this afternoon, and we have some things that we'll try and revisit for next year, and we look to get better every year.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion for approval? Robin?
I move approval of the consent agenda with the addendum.
Okay, Robin made the motion, Jim second. Jennifer?
Possible for discussion?
Is that all right if she pulls F? Okay, so you want that moved, we'd have item C then, under business?
Sure, that'd be fine.
And F is award of proposal, prime vendor food memo 88. Okay, so there's been a motion for approval of the consent agenda and a second with moving 7F to 8C. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. On to business. Item A, 2021 calendar approval memo 90. Dr. Gross.
Thank you very much. Attached to that memo, you will see a calendar that was developed by the District Calendar Committee. That committee was comprised of 18 different members. We had 3 teachers, 4 parents, 3 principals, FEA representation, support staff, 2 district office representatives, 3 students, and 1 school board member. This group met over the course of 3 different evenings to really look at state statute, look at past calendars, look at contracts, all of the things that are required to be part of our calendar. In addition to that, before the calendar committee met, we did issue a calendar survey. And on the March, I have to look up the date here, March 21st Journey article, I did send out the results of that survey so that parents, staff, and students would see the aggregate results, because when you ask for data, we wanted to give it back. What we found through that survey is 2 main themes. When we asked when we would want to start our school year, all 3 of the groups, parents, staff, and students, ranked starting in August as their first choice. Then the second question that we asked is, would you like a week-long spring break? And all 3 groups, parents, staff, and students, now at a varying rate, but all were over 50% said yes, we would like a week-long spring break. And again, all of that data was part of that Journey article that was about a month ago. So then based on the survey, based upon looking at statute, contracts and so on, the group over the first meeting basically built the first half of the calendar, talking about what semester one should look like. The second meeting, we finished that calendar, and then we asked every member to go back out and share it with their peer groups. They brought back that feedback after meeting two, and we made some modifications to the calendar or the draft based on the feedback. And then at the end of the third meeting, we came to 100% consensus to move this draft forward. So the calendar committee was 100%. I then shared the calendar with the citywide PTA council for their feedback. I would say that like any calendar, it's not going to be 100% that everyone will say it's the best. But based on the feedback, based on those conversations, we would say that this incorporated the survey results, the contract, the statutes, and so on. And with that, I would like to move this forward for your review and hopefully approval.
Jim?
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the 2021 calendar as provided under memo number 90.
Is there a second?
I would second it.
All right, there's been a motion by Jim. I'll put the second with Brian. Is there any discussion? Brandy and then Jennifer.
Nice job, and I'm actually pretty excited to see that the 27th is going to be the first day. I was on it for 2 years, and we tried to do, it was always early, and I see that June 3rd is the last day, so good job.
Jennifer.
Thank you. I'm just curious, Bob, you mentioned the people that make up the committee. Are they the same every year, or how do you solicit folks to participate?
So the students, we ask each of the high schools to represent or to nominate a student. The parents come from either the citywide PTA or the PTA PTOs, or parents who have in the past have emailed me or Diane Garsky with questions or concerns about the calendar, because we want them to be involved in the next process. With our staff, we have asked our FEA to nominate individuals for that. With the administrators, I volunteer some of our administrators to be part of that committee. So it does rotate from year to year. There are some members who have been on the committee more than 1 year, either parents or staff members, but there is an opportunity for that to change from year to year.
One follow-up question, if I may. The survey, can you remind me, how is that survey put out? Is it just in the Journey? Are there other ways that you try to, and then what are the number of participants generally?
So we did a Journey article, we did our Facebook, we tweeted it on Twitter to try to get as big of a return rate as we could for our parents and for our staff. For our students, we actually asked the high school principals to find a time for seniors to take the survey. And this year we had more participants than we did the last time we issued the survey. There were over 2,600 individuals who answered. Now that's a combination of students, parents, and staff. I'm guessing 2 years ago, and I don't have the exact number in front of me, but that was closer to 1,800. This was about 2,600.
Robin.
I know City PTA pushed this big time amongst their body as well, so we'll give them a little credit since I'm the liaison for that committee.
Okay, any other discussion or questions? Brian, thank you for your work. I know you're the board representative on this committee. All right, Anne Marie, would you please call the roll?
Paulson.
Yes.
Rodenbacher.
Yes.
Ulrich.
Yes.
Awney.
Yes.
Benson.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Brian Nelson.
Yes.
Robin Nelson.
Yes.
Knutson.
Yes, motion passes. Item B, task force. Brandy.
Well, thank you for adding this to the item. I just have a few concerns here on the task force. I know today, and all of us have received several emails, and I know Robin had mentioned it, and there is some in there about, coats and buying, and I get that. I mean, I understand that. But I just think we need to listen to these, I mean, they're community members and they're people that, you know, elect us to run on the school board to make decisions. So, I mean, I feel it's really important. And I guess my biggest concern is really how the task force is operating. I have also learned too that a good portion of the makeup of the task force is a lot of the Fargo Public employees and spouses. I've also learned a good portion of the task force, I should say, task force members necessarily do not feel like some of their ideas are being allowed, which really is a big concern to me. Some of the proposals have not all originated from the task force, and some stuff has just been inserted by others, and I'm very, very worried about that. And so I guess the biggest thing is, you know, is there a guiding principle that is compared for each scenario for those boundary options, you know, on that?
Christy?
Well, Rupa can answer first. Go ahead.
Sure. I might ask you, Brandy, to repeat some of the things so I can kind of answer to them.
Yeah.
The board was presented with a list of every participant that was going to be on the task force or the people that we're going to reach out to by category at the February 12th work session and allowed to provide input. So that charge was given to us from the Board of Education, and the way that task force was comprised of was the first and the majority of that task force was going to be a representative from every school or PTA organization. So we made sure we had equity of voice across the piece, across the district. So that's 25 of the 46 or 52 member composition of the task force. There's only been one proposal that was brought up by administration, and we acknowledge that. I kind of shared that in my report as well. We also shared with the task force members that we came up with this proposal. If we want to discuss other proposals as well, we're more than happy to. So some of the questions or concerns that kind of you brought up, I would be very curious to the specifics about that information. We have, as administrators, Fargo Public Schools, our interest is primarily on the most sustainable option that we think is going to be best for students, and we're going to carry out whatever the board decides. We are not going to be the final deciders for any boundary scenarios. We know that that's going to take board action, and we are going to be happy to implement any of those recommendations. So I want to defend at least our administrators by saying, can you please provide us with specific information? We would be more than happy, and we do plan on serving all of our task force members at the end of this process to make sure that they felt like their voice was heard. I would also ask the board liaison that's been on the task force or any of the observers that if there's been any votes or any proposals brought up by a task force member that weren't considered, that fell within the parameters that the board gave us on our February 12th work session, to please let us know so we could rectify that.
Christy, did you want to share?
Yeah, just a couple things. As the board liaison to the task force, when we talk about, you know, there's the number of employees or spouses, as the third largest employee in this community, we're going to have that, and not everyone is, in my witnessing of the task force, they also are parents. And so some of them, in the first meeting, when we introduced ourselves, they said, I am a teacher at Carl Ben, however, I am a parent, and my role here today is a parent. So they put that right out there.
So in the meeting, they said my role in here is a parent versus, is what you
Right,
said?
so they're not all there, well, and
Okay.
they didn't all, just because they're a teacher, doesn't
Yeah.
mean that they're not there as a parent. And so they're there as parents as well. And from what I have witnessed, when we have met in our small groups, we were tasked with all different scenarios to come up with. And as I watched it and was a part of mine, each table was raising their hand, and then Bob would take and draw those scenarios out. We made sure that it was saved, and then we went on to the next, and that's how we got all the different scenarios. So from that evening, there was nothing that wasn't brought forward. And then, what was your last one? There was something else here.
There might have been something regarding principles, guiding principles.
Yeah, so we've got the guiding principles that were reviewed on the 319 meeting. Quality education, equitable, not always equal space, equitable number of students, balance of socioeconomic mix, and to set attendance areas to make the best use of tax dollars. And we have not yet gone through. We've got last week, when we had a meeting, all of those guiding principles when we were looking at different boundary adjustments were to look at those things, but we have not yet, as a task force, said, this is number one priority, this is number two.
Okay, so in this task force that we have, how many meetings, I mean, did you guys just pick a number of meetings then that you were gonna have, and you were just gonna figure out everything in a portion of each meeting, or how did that?
Yeah, there's a set number of meetings, and then we have one scheduled if we need to, if we haven't finished all of our assignments, and that happened with one of the other task forces as well. But those meeting dates were set at the beginning.
Perfect. Okay.
Jennifer?
I'll add a few things too, because I've been there as an observer. And from my perspective, each of those scenarios have not been compared to the guiding principles. The guiding principles sit on a sheet on the desk, and every proposal that is talked about, the only thing that seems to matter or is asked is about the socioeconomic mix. So administration, in my view, has made that the number one criteria, even though from a board's perspective, that is not the way our guiding principles are designed. And so that is and should be a concern, because there are certainly lots of other things, much like we heard from our constituents, that walkability and proximity matter, and they should matter for all of our schools, not just one side or another of town. The other thing that I would say is that I do see it as problematic that 60% of the task force members are either FPS employees or related to SPS employees, especially when administration is the one inserting ideas. I feel like it's naive to think that they don't feel like they can push back on some of those ideas when they're not their own. So I do think that is a concern. I think that we compromise the integrity by doing that. The point of the task force was to really update our long-range plan. And we're really suffocating them by saying the only option that you have is this Band-Aid of moving a line when we have so many other things to consider. So I think that we could be doing it better, put it that way.
Rupak and then Jim?
Sure. So I'll start by saying, as it relates to the guiding principles, we are planning on starting the next meeting with the task force norming on what their ranks for the guiding principles are. We have not done the process of comparing the guiding principles to any of the options because we have not finalized any options. If you go back to our last task force meetings, we were still tasked at the very end by saying, can you make additional tweaks to some of the scenarios? So the task force hasn't even said, okay, let's now analyze these versus the guiding principles. As it relates to the composition, we did a call for parents and for everyone else that met each of those categories. So at the end of the day, administration is going to carry out whatever's voted by the board. None of the three facilitators in the task force have any school-age children that are going to be decided by the outcomes of this task force. We are not going to, it's not going to matter for us. Whatever the board decides, that's what we're going to move forward with, and that we have the district's best interests. So I would strongly hope that if anyone felt that because administration put in one of the options for consideration, if they felt like they were being suffocated and that's the way they had to vote, I would hope that that would be a conversation that we have, because that's a larger cultural concern that I would have within this district. And I just can't, I don't see that to be true, but I would entertain any staff member that does. Secondly, when we voted on which of these options do we want to discuss further, we didn't let them know that one was coming from administration. They had 9 options in front of them. They voted. Then we said, we came up with one of these options. Do we want to talk a little bit further about that? Lastly, I would just kind of go back to your last comment about the process as a whole. This is ultimately going to be a board decision that is going to be made. Administration was charged with facilitating a task force. To provide input or a recommendation that the board can use to make that information. If we have failed the board in not fulfilling that recommendation, then I apologize, but I think the board also has the ability to solicit the information that you want that's going to help you make that decision as well. But we were following the charge that we were given. We outlined the process. We outlined the composition of the task force. We provided all of that information, including the parameters, to the Board of Education at our work session on February 12th for the specific purpose of making sure that we could fulfill your charge with the direction that we had outlined.
Jim?
Well, first an observation. I'm not sure why this is on the business agenda because I don't see any action in what you've asked for here. So first of all, this probably should have come as a board report or maybe not come to this room to begin with. If there's been a compromise to the process, it's what we're doing right now. We are trying to short circuit this task force midway through their work with good intentions, perhaps, because we have public that's telling us that they don't think the direction this task force is going is the right way. I don't know what direction this task force is going, but I do know the more we talk about it here, the more we're compromising whatever comes from them. Ultimately, if we don't like their recommendations, we're going to do whatever we do as a board, as long as it's a majority decision. But I flat out don't think this belonged on the agenda. I think it should have come through governance, and it probably would have been dealt with differently. And I really think we all need to keep our lips buttoned, let this process go through, and our time to talk will come.
I have one comment that I'd like to add, unless there's something else. So many times if it's something is on a business area of the agenda, it's because we're taking action officially, we're going to be voting on something. But I do want to make sure that the task force members know that I appreciate the work that's being done. I believe all of us do. We have many members of our community that are volunteering their time and dedicating their effort to the longevity of our school district. And I want them to be able to have the time to do the work that we asked them to do. I have reviewed the February 12th work session notes, our official notes. It outlines the decisions that we made at that work session and provided administration with guidance in terms of how to move forward with the task force. It discusses that the one statement says, board members reached consensus to support item 1 on the document regarding the necessity to change attendance boundaries due to enrollment projections. The task force is therefore discussing this based on our consensus at that February 12th meeting. The task force members also have a process to reach 80% consensus in order for moving forward with their discussions. And so at the initial task force meeting, there was consensus that further conversation needs to happen regarding boundaries. And that was decided by the task force members. So it's my wish, and I hope it's all of our wishes, that the task force is allowed to finish its work and that we are able to then receive that information and digest it and use it to help make the decisions that we need to make. Is there anything else that needs to be discussed on item B? Jennifer?
I'd just like to say a couple more things. And I respectfully disagree in how number 9 was thrown out there. Bob said this was number 9, his proposal that he wanted to add. So it was clear to the staff that it came from administration before it was asked for a vote. Secondly, Rebecca, in terms of your comments, I would say what you're saying is there is no room for flexibility. If enrollment projections, if we know today are different than we thought they were in February or whenever that direction was given, you're saying there's no room for flexibility. And I have a problem with that as one board member. I think we should be flexible and we should take into account data to make data-driven decisions.
So I want to make sure that we try to not assume what someone else is saying with the words that are being used. So is there anything else that needs to be discussed regarding item B? Robin?
I think, likewise, I thank the participants. It's not an easy discussion. I feel that this task force process is probably more driven by the task force members than in the past. In the past, the administration's tack was to present ideas and get feedback. So I was delightfully surprised that the ideas were coming for the task force. So I think that's a positive direction, and I appreciate your attempts in really having it come up from the task force members themselves. And I'm gonna go home and.
All right, are we ready to move on to the next item? Brandy?
Before I was so rudely cut off, I mean, that's the problem. I didn't even get a chance to finish. I would like to make a motion to disband the task force and wait until we have updated projections and the updated 2020 census information, and then we can go form a group that represents our community equally. That was why it was brought into business.
Okay, thank you, Brandy, for that. There's been a motion. Anne Marie, do you have the writing?
I don't. I'm wondering if you have that pre-written out that I could seek.
And then I would like you to reread that. Yes. Yep. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. Anne Marie will read it to us once she has it down, so that we make sure that we have it correct.
There's a motion on the floor to disband the task force and wait until we have updated projections and the updated 2020 census information, and then form a group that represents our community equally.
All right, that's the motion in front of us. Is there any discussion, questions? Anne Marie, please call the roll.
Rodenbiker.
No.
Ulrich.
No.
Ani.
Yes.
Benson.
Yes.
Johnson.
No.
Brian Nelson.
No.
Robin Nelson.
No.
Paulson.
No.
Knutson.
No. Motion fails. The third item under B is award of proposal prime vendor food memo 88. Jennifer, you had requested this be pulled from the consent agenda. Would you like to take it?
Yes. I did, because here too, we received some correspondence around it, and I was just hoping that there might be someone in the room that could speak to it. And maybe there needs to be a delay based on what the correspondence, what our email is stating. Does Rupak seems to know what I'm talking about?
Sure, I will pass it off to Jackie, who might refer to Cindy too, so we'll let Jackie start with it.
Yes, so we solicited bids for a prime food vendor who supplies the majority of our product for nutrition services. We received 3 vendors who submitted, one who was deemed not to be responsive because they were only bidding on a certain area of that bid document. After we received the bids, we have, Cindy and I have gone through and we have scored the 2 vendors then that were responsible. They were scored on, I'm going to count for you, Cindy, 6 different areas, of which Cisco came on top with that with a score of 94 versus 90. And then in addition to that, we also look at the overall bid cost, of which Cisco had the lowest cost. So our recommendation is to move forward with Cisco as our awarded vendor.
Brian, excuse me, David.
Who was the winning bid last year?
Cisco.
Jim?
I'm going to move that we accept the low bid from Cisco in the amount of $1,681,063.94 for our prime vendor food contract for nutrition services for the coming year.
I'd second it.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? Anne Marie, please call the roll.
Ulrich.
Yes.
Ani,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Brian Nelson,
Yes.
Robin Nelson,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Rodenbiker,
Yes.
Knutson.
Yes, motion passes. Board reports. NSBA Sharing Memo 91. Thank you to everyone for filling out the information according to the sessions that you attended. It's a lengthy document. That's good. There are quite a few that were marked with that it would be worth exploring further or learning more about. I noticed that some of the sessions didn't have either a yes or no marked. I think I did that with one of mine, and so I guess let me know if that was a situation for your sessions, if there was something that you did indeed want to have follow-up on, but that just maybe didn't mark it, let me know so that we can make sure that we stay on top of it. Does anyone have any particular thoughts regarding moving forward with this document or anything you'd like to share specifically? My thought would be that the items that were marked for future study, that goes on to governance to sort through it from there. All right. Thank you very much again. We'll hear more later as we move forward. Committee liaison and correspondence reports. Robin, let's start with you and we'll work around the table and have Brian close us out.
I was so excited to share this that I asked Rebecca for a special place on the agenda, but she didn't give it to me, so I will. She doesn't know what it is. This isn't my liaison related, but this is kind of cool news. We had an 8th grader from Discovery, and she was named Boys and Girls Clubs of America's North Dakota Youth of the Year at a competition on Saturday at our local Boys and Girls Club. She was awarded a $5,000 scholarship, and she'll go on to Chicago for the regional competition that can award her $25,000. So we'll send her coach and her mom. And then when she came to the club this afternoon, she said, "So who told the principal that I won this award?" Because they announced it on the loudspeaker, and I was totally embarrassed. Robin. And I said, yeah, I had something to do with that. So Nevaeh Stevens is North Dakota's Youth of the Year for the Boys and Girls Club, so that's a big deal. Fargo Cass Public Health meeting was postponed because it was snowed out. It is rescheduled, I believe, for the same time as a special board meeting. I just need to confirm that, so checking on if you have a quorum or not, so maybe Anne Marie and Rebecca and I can visit on that. Let's see here, City PTA luncheon, as a reminder, is May 15th. I made all these notes. I want to recognize some PTA members from my liaison school. Washington PTA members are present in the audience. Now to the very exciting legislative stuff. We're coming down to the last couple days here. The session is expected to sine die on Friday or Saturday, is what I heard. We're rolling pretty well here. The big one that we've been talking about is the Class 1E exempt weapons bill, Senate Bill 2172. There was some great amendments that came out of the committee, and I would have been, it died. It died on the floor resoundingly, so it's done. So that is gone. Some of the pieces that I think may resurface next session might be paramedics being able to carry with certain approved licenses, and that is as a result of the quadruple murder that was, I think it was in Mandan. A lot of the paramedics arrived first, and they didn't know if the murderer was still in the room. So, I mean, I get some of the logic behind that. So, we'll be watching that next session. But this is a dead issue, and I think enough people. School Boards Association wasn't the only one opposing it. It was churches and universities and school resource officers. So, Alexis Bailey is doing a tremendous job for North Dakota School Boards Association, keeping us up to date on that. So, Other than that, I might be able to catch a breath here at I take that back. After Saturday or next week, I might be able to, because things move so quickly right now. But I think we had a pretty good session. So thank you for all of your participation. We'll do a debrief at our next GAC meeting.
Thank you, Robin, for all your work. John?
The negotiations committee met with the association this past Monday to negotiate a new contract. It was very well attended. I think there were about 100 people in the room. Good conversations there. We reached some tentative agreements. There'll be more discussion on this coming Monday. That is the 29th, here in the boardroom at 4:30. That is my update. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Jennifer?
Communications met, and we continued the conversation around the community linkage plans, specifically discussing the possibilities around how can we strengthen our relationship with city planning and city initiatives, local planning committees. We asked, let's see here, there was discussion around of FPS board hosting an annual event regarding FPS's vision for the future. We discussed the possibility of coming up with a booklet that much describes our mission and vision, much like our legislative booklet, to be able to share at maybe an annual sort of gathering for PTAs, PTOs, et cetera. City developers, we just sort of explored, brainstormed an idea of which groups we would reach out to attend something like that. We moved GP 14 review to the next agenda or the next meeting, as well as additional thought leader topics. And the next meeting is going to be May 20th at noon.
Thank you, Jennifer. David?
Well, since last we met, we've had negotiation committee meetings. I attended the communications meeting. I met with my Liaison School Discovery yesterday and have set a meeting at Kennedy for Thursday, and Discovery's PTA is meeting Friday at 4 p.m.
Jim?
The Community Development Committee met after a 2-month break due to weather and other scheduling conflicts. We kind of looked through the 2019 action plan for community development grant and home funds. Talked a little bit about some possible future discussions, both with the Planning Commission and the City Development Committee or Community Development Committee, to really hone in on what our guidelines should be going forward for grant funds in particular. We had an issue, I think for the first time in the history of Fargo, in that we apparently did not get enough of our HUD dollars spent in the right time frame. So we're kind of on a clock right now to rectify that over the next year. It's not an uncommon thing from what I heard today. It's happened to Moorhead before. It's just the first time it happened in Fargo. And it was primarily because of a couple of projects that got approved for grants, and then the organization was not able to get the project up and running during the right time frame. They think they've got a solution already to spend those dollars, primarily two property acquisitions. One I know is Fargo Youth Works, who I think is relocating or wanting to relocate, so they're going to be eligible for a fairly significant grant from the Community Development Fund. And the other is, I think, a group called Beyond Shelter, who has a housing project as well that is going to be breaking ground. So they think they've got a place for those dollars to immediately get used, but it led to a broader discussion on, okay, we're probably going to have to do a better job of vetting the applicants to really know who is shovel ready for a project. so we don't run into this problem. If you violate the rules 2 years in a row, then you are on a hiatus from getting the HUD dollars. So that is not something we want to see happen. I was going to report on the unification drill because both of them were my liaison schools. So I started the morning at one and finished the morning at the other. But as everybody already told you, it went probably as smooth as silk. A big shout out to the North High students who volunteered their time to really take the place of parents in large part. And so the reunification worked because we had the North High students there that were connecting with those Madison Elementary students. And I too was at the negotiation session. I got to one of the negotiating committee meetings, missed the other one. And I think that was it since our last meeting.
Thank you, Jim. Christie.
I was at negotiations committee and the meeting, as already reported, and I was going to report on task forces. However, I think we've had enough discussion tonight, so I will bypass on that and give a report. Our next meeting for that is Tuesday evening, so I'll give a report after that.
Okay, Christie, thank you. Brandy?
I attended negotiations as well and communications, which you already heard reports for that. And I also visited my schools on April 10th and met with staff over at Clara Barton, Hawthorne, and then Centennial. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandy. Brian?
On last Wednesday, April 17th, at Fargo South, I got the opportunity to sit with Dr. Todd Birch and staff with the literacy grant findings from the doctor, I believe, that ran it, with the teachers, which was pretty cool. And Dr. Birch does such a good job, and I thought he did a good job of letting the teachers know that they're the most important resource that we have, one of the, to teach these students. After that meeting, I was able to go to the civil engineering and architect class that's offered, and we roll that over with ITV, and so that we have students from Fargo North and Fargo Davies taking it. And I thought that was pretty cool, especially coming from a smaller town where we went hundreds of miles to teach classes. We're doing it right within the same city of Fargo. And it really felt like a architecture class too. After that, I went over to the construction class to check out the home that they built or that they're in the process of building, and got the chance to visit with that particular teacher probably for an hour. Very impressed by watching these students work in building, and we basically watched and monitored, and they would ask questions from time to time. And then, as I know it, he goes to Fargo, or the Davies School, and builds a house there as well. So it was kind of, when you're looking at this, wow, we're doing a pretty good job of using our teacher here and making sure that kids are getting opportunities. And this was a big thing for me. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to go to the national conference, was to learn more about career and technical education. Like it or not, this is going to be huge. It already is huge. And I'm excited to see how our district can move forward in CTE even more than what we're doing now, especially when you go to the national conference. And then getting the chance to talk to Dr. Rupak Gandhi about the experiences he's had. He shared a few things that I'm sure a lot of you aren't aware of, and ask him about that sometime. He knows quite a few things that he's done in his past that he's not sharing, and I'm glad that you know those things, and I'm looking forward to seeing where we can go with career and technical education. So it was a great experience. I just loved going to Fargo South. I've always loved Fargo South, even when I was not a Class A person. I just for whatever reason, it's weird how that happened. And then I get to be the liaison for Fargo South, so it's a really good experience. Now tomorrow I get to go to Lewis and Clark Elementary, so I'm jacked about that. So go early and get a couple, 2 or 3 hours in, and it's fun to do this. So thanks.
Thank you, Brian. The president's report has been passed out. Governance meets April 25th at 7:30 in the morning. As the board's liaison to the Native American Commission, today I attended, there are two public forums that Indian Ed is holding today. I attended the one that was this afternoon. The other one, I believe, was at 4:30. Melody Stabner from the Fargo, West Fargo Indian Ed program led the conversation. Dr. Gross was also there, and had the opportunity to learn a little bit more about a variety of things, but to highlight teachers within our school district, 20-some, close to 30, I almost feel. 23, okay. 23 teachers within our school system that have had the opportunity to learn more about the North Dakota Native American Essential Understandings, which is a program that has been officially developed and is housed within the North Dakota Department of Public Instruction. It's an elaborate curriculum that where natives themselves have been involved in developing the curriculum through storytelling, and really it's curriculum that is outlined so that anyone in the state, any teacher in the state ultimately can access curriculum online for, I believe, all grades K through 12 to help implement in certain areas of teaching, but it's very complicated because we're asking individuals to maybe learn about something within society that they haven't been exposed to before, and that means the treatment of Native Americans as indigenous people within our community right here in Fargo, and some of the historical trauma that goes along with it. And so really, I guess a way of pushing us, learning more about our own history. And since there is a link on the DPI website, my plan will be I'll share that with Anne Marie, and then I'd like to distribute that to board members so that you have the opportunity to at least just visit it and see what's out there, a little bit of what I'm talking about. And so I'm looking forward to learning more about the opportunity for additional teachers and staff to be involved in training and how we work that into the Fargo curriculum. Native American Commission meets next Thursday, and it was delayed because of our flood issue here in Fargo, so we didn't meet in April. And I too was at communications and negotiations. I have been an observer at the task force meetings, and I am going to try my best when I observe the next time to make sure that I allow the task force members, the official task force members, their time to ask questions of the resource persons that are in the room. I have taken it upon myself a couple of times, I know, to ask questions even as an observer. And that I've realized that takes time away from those that have dedicated their time as volunteers to serve on the task force. And so I am going to, I need to remind myself that I'm there as an observer. We have Christy as our liaison. She is officially a person that can ask questions at those meetings. And I know that as a board member, if I have questions later, I have access to individuals here within the district, and I can get my questions answered. So I really, really am going to commit to you that our task force members are able to get their questions answered during the time that they're there, because they don't have the same accessibility that I have. So I would encourage anyone else too that is an observer, whether it's a board member or a community member, to try to do the same. It can be difficult because we all want to learn, but I would just put that challenge out there. And that's all I have. Okay, anything else for the order this evening?
President
John.
Knutson, I would move we enter executive session for the purpose of negotiation strategy as permitted under North Dakota Century Code, Section 44-04-19.1.
There's been a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. 7:10 p.m. And if you are a board member or a member of administration, you may remain. Otherwise, please exit the room. Thank you. PM, and we were back in regular session. Is there any other business for the meeting this evening? John?
President Knutson, the negotiations committee will meet at noon on Monday, the 29th. And I also wanted to point out that while we're meeting that evening with the FEA, we also have one additional session already scheduled with them as well for the Monday, the 13th of May. So if y'all want to make sure that your calendars are clear for that. And consider bringing future dates to either the 29th or the 13th of May meeting, since we may not be done with our sessions yet. We might, we maybe not, but let's look at our calendars. Thank you.
Can I get a time for that, May 13th?
Also 4:30 in the boardroom.
Thank you.
Christie?
I'm just wondering if the planning committee could meet right after governance on Friday morning, since it's the same crowd.
This
Tomorrow.
week, you're saying?
Yes, this week.
Yeah.
It's Thursday, isn't it?
Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday. We have governance at 7:30. If we could just do a quick planning after that.
So approximately 8:30.
Okay.
8:30 a.m.?
Pardon? Maybe 30 minutes. What I'd like to do is have some numbers that we could have then for negotiations on Monday. So when we meet it for committee, we have something to talk with. I'd like to be done by 9:30. That would be great.
By 9:30 would be
Yes.
fine.
Rupak, you do need to add something?
Just to clarify, because I think at the next planning meeting, we had a couple of agenda items, and we were going to have a guest at one of them on May 3rd as well. So can we just clarify what would be on this planning agenda?
This would be a special planning agenda just to get some numbers from Jackie in regards to salary and yes, Jackie, I'd be asking Jackie too.
Since it is Tuesday night,
Yes.
I would really, it would really be beneficial to me if you would let me know what you would want as soon as possible.
Okay, John and I will talk, and then I will talk to you right away.
So I have time to prepare. Thank you.
Does that answer your question, Rupak? Okay.
So can I ask a clarifying question? So this is an additional planning meeting, not in place of the 3rd?
Correct.
Got it.
Unless it would be more beneficial for us just to wait. John, how do you feel with that if we waited for everything until the 3rd? Or would you like numbers?
I think we need numbers to be discussing on Monday, if at all possible.
Okay. Then you and I talk for 5 minutes after.
Yes.
With Jackie.
You're welcome. Is there anything else? All right, it's 7:33 p.m. and we are adjourned. Thank you.